Your sixth grade, you have been doing a little bit of study and talk about the authors Linda Sue Park and Gary Paulsen, and to my understanding, learning a little about two of their books. And so today what I'm doing is a quick book talk for you about a few other of their fabulous books. And both authors have written so many titles, so many books, some of which we have in our library. And I wanted to share just a few of those with you to give you some other ideas of books that you might want to check out or take a look at, just to consider, and especially now that you know these authors a little bit already, some other books that you might want to look at. We're going to look at three books first by Linda Sue Park. The first is one you might already be familiar with. This book, A Long Walk to Water, is based on a true story, and it's found in the realistic fiction section. This is a book that is told in two stories. It's told in alternating sections, right? So we've got two narratives going, one from a girl in Sudan in 2008, and the other being a boy in the Sudan in 1985. In it, a girl, Naya, is fetching water from a pond that is a 2-hour walk every day from her home. And she makes 2 trips to this pond every day. We're going to hear from Linda Sue Park in this video to tell us a little bit more about her inspiration for writing this story.
My new book, A Long Walk to Water, is based on the true story of a family friend named Salva Dut. Salva was born and raised in southern Sudan, and at the age of 11, he was separated from his family by war. There's also a second story of a girl named Naya who lives in Sudan today. I set part of the story in 1985 and part of it in 2008 to give American readers some idea of what's been happening in Sudan over the last generation, which I think far too few of us know about. I was inspired to write A Long Walk to Water by Salva Dut and learning about his life's work today, which is with an organization that drills water wells in southern Sudan for villages where there has never been a supply of clean water. Learning about him and his life is enough to make you want to say, well, how can I help?
Linda.
So that's our first book to read. It's definitely a quick read, and one that if you've not yet read it, definitely a highly recommended book in realistic fiction. A second story by Linda Sue Park is in historical fiction. This is fabulous for those that have ever heard this phrase, or I guess just even if you've ever been told that if you want to learn how to do something well, you should go to the people who are the best at what they do, right? The idea of learning from an expert or just learning from the best, right? If you've heard that phrase before. Tree Ear is our main character and is an orphan. Tree Ear lives under a bridge in Chalpo, a potter's village that is known for being incredible with pottery, in particular, a specific kind of very delicate pottery making. And he's become fascinated with the potter's craft. He wants nothing more than to watch a specific potter who is very, very good at what he does by the name of Min. And when Min decides that he's going to take Tree Ear kind of under his wing as his helper and teach Tree Ear exactly what he does, Tree Ear is ecstatic until he finds that there are lots of things getting in the way of him learning this craft. Everything from what hard work it is to dig and haul the clay in order to get ready for making these pots. Min has an incredible temper, and so he's not the most patient expert or teacher. And Tree Ear doesn't even realize until he starts to do this how little he really knows about the craft. It is going to take a lot for him to prove himself in this book, A Single Shard. I had no idea how much I would enjoy this story, truly. I picked this one up a long time ago, and I thought, I don't know if this is going to interest me at all, and I was captivated in reading this book. I really loved it. I loved the characters, and just the idea of someone persevering, following their passion, having a dream, and wanting to pursue it. I think you'll love it too. It's in historical fiction, so take a look at that one. And this last one is someone, maybe you've even seen this one. It was on our new book tower earlier this year, even though we've had it in the library for a year or more. This book is trying to answer a question. If your house were on fire, what one thing would you save? It's realistic fiction, and in this, our author is really trying to think about the fact that she says we don't need a blazing tragedy to determine what we hold most precious in our lives. We can define what's vital through our thoughts and memories, always at hand, in our hearts and our heads, safe where the flames don't reach. I really like that idea that Linda Sue Park has, this idea that we don't have to have a tragedy or something terrible happen that we're confronted with in order to think about what is most precious to us. And if you think about it for a second, what is one thing you might choose to save? If your family and your pets were immediately safe, what would be the very first thing that you would take? Right? If you think about that for a moment. In this story, a teacher asks her class that question, and some students know the answer right away. Others come around to that decision more slowly, and then some even change their minds as they hear their classmates' responses. And in the book, you get to read about it through poetry and through illustrations, and the poetry is written in a really unique type of poetry that I had not learned about before reading this book. It's the Siho specialized poetic form, as you can see here on the screen. It's a little bit like haiku, written in 3 lines, and each line has to have 14 to 16 syllables. If you're interested in this one, again, it is in realistic fiction and might be one for you to try. Switching over to the other author you have been talking about, Gary Paulsen, author of Hatchet. This author has written lots of adventure stories in particular, but he has also written some other things, and I'm starting with one of his science fiction books. The Time Hackers is the name of this one. And I don't know if you've ever had this happen before, where you've gone to your locker at school and you've opened it only to find something weird inside. I don't know, maybe it's been some milk that you left there too long or some gum that got stuck. Well, 7th grader Dorso opens his locker door to find a dead body. Ugh. And then 30 seconds later, it disappears. But this is not the first bizarre thing that's appeared in his locker and then disappears. This has actually happened quite a few times. So something is obviously going on. Someone has decided to make Dorso and his friend the target of some very strange practical jokes. And these gamesters have hacked into the timeline. So things from the past are appearing in the present. But these aren't the kinds of jokes that are exactly funny. They're more dangerous. Read this book to find out what's going on and how they're going to try to stop what's happening before it's too late. How to Train Your Dad is one of Gary Paulsen's final books that he'd written before he passed away. This is in the humor section, and I'm sure there's no one listening to my book talk who has ever been embarrassed by their parents or any adult, actually. We don't do anything that's embarrassing. But 12-year-old Carl somehow is embarrassed by his dad. His dad might be a brilliant guy, but he has done all kinds of embarrassing things. He dumpster dives for food. He gets all of his clothes at garage sales, even though they have plenty of money for other places. And he has decided, Carl, that is, the 12-year-old, that he has had enough. His dad needs to start acting like, I don't know, a regular person and not doing all these kinds of odd things just to stay off the grid. And so Carl has determined he's going to do something a little unusual. He finds this brochure, a puppy training pamphlet, right? Like how to train your dog, how to get the dog to do the things you want it to do. And he's going to use that to try to train his dad to do things the way he thinks his dad should do them. Well, how's it going to go? Will it turn out okay? Is he going to get his dad to be the cool dad that he's always hoped for? Will he convince him to do these things to the point where Carl can even impress that girl at school? You got to find out by reading the book. And last but not least, back to some historical fiction. For those of you that like history and are looking for a shorter read, Gary Paulsen has written this one about being involved in the Civil War. This is the story of back in June of 1861, when the Civil War began. This Charlie Goddard enlisted in the 1st Minnesota Volunteers. At the time, he was 15 years old, not much older than you. And he didn't know what a shooting war meant, or really what he was fighting for, but he didn't want to miss out on what he thought would be a great adventure. Turned out that the shooting war was a lot more than just shooting. It was a horrible combat. It was just trying to survive. And he had no idea how it would have an impact on him to cross the field toward the enemy and wait to be, potentially killed. When he entered the service, he was just a boy. When he left the service, he was very different. Although only 4 years had gone by, he was 19 when he was done, and it changed everything about his life afterwards, even though only a short amount of his life had occurred during that time. You can read this book from Gary Paulsen, all about being a Minnesotan in the Civil War, and not only what that war was like, but how it had an impact on his life afterwards. Hopefully one of these books sounds like one you might want to pick up. We have a few others by these authors in the library as well. I'd be happy to help you find those too. And of course, like always, you can be using your catalog on the iPad to search in your classroom before you come down to the library. That's always helpful because then you know ahead of time if books are checked out, if there's a book you're going to want to put on hold. You know what you're shopping for. You can even bring that iPad down to the library and show one of us down here that, hey, I've got a book I'm looking for. Can you help me find it on the shelf? Thanks so much for your attention. Happy reading.